Hello friends, I'm about to start a new Nancy Drew reading vlog where I'm going to be reading Most Likely to Die. I honestly have no idea what this book is about if it's not like a string of Barbie murders, like a serial killer who just goes out and kills Barbie dolls with like a tiny knife. But let's find out together. I'll read the back. It says Case 27 of the Nancy Drew Files. Also, like Nancy Drew Files books, you know you're in for a good time. They're fun. They're like spicy, like a little sprinkling of spice. Baby's first spice, basically, is the genre of these books. Nancy's high school reunion party turns up an old flame and ignites a burning feud. Her high school reunion? She's 18. Why on earth is she going to a high school reunion 1 year after she's finished high school? Wendy Harriman, the most popular cheerleader in Nancy's class, invites her old schoolmates to a beach party. That sounds summery. This is going to be perfect. But the reunion stirs up much more than memories. Someone deliberately sets a flash fire at the barbecue pit. Then Wendy's room is ransacked and robbed. When Nancy investigates, she discovers Wendy isn't as popular as she seems. A few fellow students still carry grudges against the snobbish teen queen. Nancy also finds that former boyfriend Don Cameron is still carrying a torch for her, which makes Ned see red. Oh, good, there's gonna be some, like, anti-Ned drama in this book. My favorite kind of thing. Like, you know, if Ned has to be in a Nancy book, I want him to suffer. But romance takes a back seat to the mysterious crimes that follow the party guests. Now Nancy has to find out which of their friends is the worst enemy ever. Well, this sounds great. Some great names in this. Judd Reese. Oh, Judd Reese is a former greaser. What year is this set? 1950s? Do they even still have greasers? This is 1988. Did they have greasers in 1988? What even is the definition of a greaser? Merriam-Webster, help me out here. An aggressive, swaggering young white male, usually of a working class background. The first definition is the one that greases. To smear or daub with grease. Do you think this guy in the Nancy Drew book is an aggressive, swaggering young white man from a working class background, or one who swabs with grease? The plan is, go to a local bakery, pick up a lovely treat, then go to a park at the riverside, sit there, read my book, have a lovely time. But we'll see where the day takes us. Hopefully not to a flash fire at a barbecue pit. I'd rather not be involved with that. Thought I'd do a quick little what's in my bag before I go out. We've got water bottle, essential on hot days, or any days, actually. You should be drinking water, you should be hydrating at all times. Listen to Mr. Water Bottle or I'll beat you up. I've got a towel to sit on by the river, my book, my wallet, hand sanitizer and wet wipes because I'm the mom friend, hand cream because one of the worst feelings is having dry hands in my opinion, lip balm because this is the one thing I cannot leave the house without, gum, Moomin pill box with exactly one ibuprofen in it, sunglasses, and disposable camera because I'm nothing if not pretentious, and a recovering 2014 Tumblr hipster. Hello, I'm back. I had a really nice time reading by the river, even though it's very warm outside. When I'm about halfway through, most likely to die. So it starts off with Nancy, Bess, and George getting ready to go to this reunion party at Wendy Harriman's place. Bess says, "Here we are about to see everyone from high school for the first time in ages." A very, very specific amount of time. And she says, "I won't be happy at this party unless every single guy there says how gorgeous I've gotten since high school." Okay, so since 6 months ago, they got this invitation from Wendy Harriman that says, "End of summer beach party for the best class ever. Be there at 4 p.m. to party with all your old friends from River Heights High. Come on, gang, let's make Wednesday night a winner. Party hard on a Wednesday night. Let's turn up on a Wednesday night." And Nancy notes that the wording of the invitation sounded exactly the way Wendy always talked. Wendy sounds insufferable. But also, the more you learn about Wendy, the more it does seem like she's kind of an insufferable person. Like, Bess says that Wendy always makes her feel like a total clod. That must be some 1980s slang. Like a clod of dirt. So they arrive at the party and Wendy greets them and says that her boyfriend, Rod, sexiest name ever, is out of town, apparently. Which feels like the out-of-high-school equivalent of he goes to another school. There's a few people that they meet at the party. One of them is Celia Quaid. Celia apparently has lost a lot of weight since high school. And, like, Wendy's like, "Oh, how? How did you lose the weight?" And Celia's like, "You should know." Which really makes it sound like Wendy got Celia into coke or something. I'm waiting for that to be revealed. Then, of course, there's Nancy's ex-boyfriend, Don Cameron, who immediately kisses her on the cheek. Ned is a little bit jealous. He tries to hide it, but he is. Then, of course, there's the fakest name of all, Judd Reese, who previously was the biggest greaser in their class, just covered in grease. But now, apparently, he's a gentleman biker. A gentleman biker, like a gentleman motorcycle rider. Which I think is so funny. Like, I would love, at multiple points in my life, to be described as both the biggest greaser and a gentleman biker. Like, incredible. Judd apparently wasn't invited to the party, but he crashes it anyway. He rocks up on his motorbike like a total gentleman biker, and he's like, "Oh, let me have a drink." And Wendy's like, "Oh yeah, the soda's over there." And then she worries about him getting nasty. So it sounds like, Judd has a bit of a crippling soda addiction. Someone better watch his soda intake for the night, because he could get real out of line if he has too much soda to drink. There's also Patrick Emmons, who is Wendy's ex-boyfriend and a football player. Patrick decides to man the grill, but when he turns it on to cook their burgers, he is hit in the face by an explosion of flame. Any guesses as to what happens next? Because that is the end of chapter cliffhanger. My prediction was Patrick gets third-degree burns and has to be rushed to the hospital, and like the next few years of his life are consumed by intense, extensive facial reconstruction surgery. But if you guessed absolutely nothing at all, he doesn't even get a burn of any kind, his face just gets a little pink, you would be correct. So Patrick goes to put some, ice on his pink face, and Ned takes over the grill, at which point Bess says to him, "Try not to burn the burgers." Har har. Very funny, Bess. Someone almost got permanently disfigured, but that's hilarious. Then Bess and Nancy go talk alone, and Bess is like, dang, I wish Wendy could be nicer. She keeps saying catty remarks to me whenever she goes by. And then Celia comes out from behind a bush and she's like, haha, I heard everything you said. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. And it's like, oh no, Bess said that Celia was mean to her. How rude, how awful. Gosh, I sure wouldn't want Wendy to hear that. They do some fun party activities like looking through old yearbooks, which, is on my top 5 list of things I'd least want to do at a party. Things get more exciting when Wendy goes up to her room and discovers it's been ransacked. Wendy's room had been completely trashed. All her bureau drawers had been pulled out and their contents dumped on the floor. Her jewelry box lay on the floor too, empty except for a few trinkets. Her makeup and perfume had been smeared all over her dressing table, and her mirrors cracked all the way across. But that wasn't why Wendy was screaming. On her bed lay a doll dressed in a cheerleader's costume with a large butcher knife through its chest. The knife was pinning down a piece of paper. It was made up from letters cut out of newspaper headlines. Nancy read out loud, "Greetings to the most self-centered brat at River Heights High. Wish this doll were you." So yeah, needless to say, someone's not a very big fan of Wendy. The police come to investigate and they conclude it is a simple case of breaking and entering. And they say that the doll that Nancy found, with the butcher knife through its chest and the threatening note, is probably not relevant to the burglary. Never mind the fact that it was discovered at exactly the same time in the same room as the burglary happened. Is this the police department or the circus? Because these cops are clowns. No wonder Nancy got such a good reputation for her detective work. The bar is so low. It's so low that not even an ant could walk beneath it. Apparently Celia previously sent Wendy a poison pen letter, so that's suspicious. Just a reminder, Celia is the one who had the glow up by taking lots of Ozempic. So this whole night, Don, Nancy's ex-boyfriend, has been coming on pretty hot to Nancy. It's clear he wants to get back together. He's a little bit obsessed with her. But then as she's leaving, he pops out from the shadows. I think the word they used actually was looms, which is so sinister. But then he comes out and he says, "Stay away from this case." Then Nancy is swarmed by hornets because someone left a hornet nest on the front seat of her car. Again, you'd expect her to have to go to hospital for this and to be super swollen up or something, but no, she gets out of it pretty unscathed. Lucky girl. I feel like this book has a lot of instances where they were just trying to include nasty fates that have never happened in Nancy Drew books before. So you get things like exploding barbecues, hornets swarming. Later on, someone falls off a ladder while they're painting. It's like they're just trying to think of what haven't we done before? And the list is very short, and they have to try to fit them in very convoluted ways. How did the culprit get that hornet's nest into Nancy's car without getting stung themselves? Apparently Nancy opens the car door and screams, and they're like, the scream woke the hornets, and they rushed Nancy. It's like the hornets wouldn't wake up when, their home is taken from wherever they built it and transported across the lawn of this fancy house and put into someone's car, dumped into someone's car. That didn't wake them up? Are you sure? Yeah, this is how they described what happens with the hornets. Once they had been evicted from their hive and were out in the air, the insects seemed to lose their sense of purpose and flew off in all directions. That always happens when I encounter a hornet's nest. They lose the will to care as soon as they leave their house. Common hornet behavior to just not care and not sting anyone. But on the seat in the car, Nancy finds another threatening note. No doll, though. The note says, "Still a snoop, aren't you? Don't stir things up, or this is only the beginning." The context of this note is that back in high school, they used to call her Nancy the Snoop. A real original and very cutting nickname, you know. The next day, Nancy goes to talk to Wendy, who says that Celia deserved to be bullied in high school because of what she looked like back then. Might I add that Wendy was the one doing the bullying as well? Wendy's the villain here. Like, Nancy is hired to defend the villain in this case. Honestly, if I'd heard her say that, I would have been like, I forgot, I have another 5 cases to attend to. Sorry, I won't be able to solve your case, Wendy. And also, I was threatened. It was very scary. There were a lot of hornets. I mean, they didn't care enough to sting me, but it was still very scary. I've been officially scared off this case. You're on your own, Wendy. Nancy leaves, but it's pretty soon after she's left, Wendy calls her back, and she's like, oh my god, look at this. And she has, like, her old yearbook, which has been vandalized, including someone has written under her senior photo, most likely to die, which explains the title. I think that's pretty funny, to be honest. They've actually written a lot of different things on every page in the yearbook that Wendy is featured in. Voted the prettiest brat in the class was written over a shot of Wendy in the homecoming parade. Yeah, that's the nastiest, meanest thing you could ever think of. Pretending she cares, it said next to a shot showing her cheering a winning tackle. Guess which one is stupider? Asked another scribble next to a shot of Wendy hugging the cheerleader's mascot, a teddy bear. Some of the scribbles were more ominous. You're on your way out. You won't even know what hit you. And simply, get ready. I love how the prettiest brat in class, that's like mainly a compliment. They're saying she's the prettiest. What a mean, cruel thing to say to someone. How will Wendy ever recover from this? Anyway, yeah, Wendy apparently was a big bully in high school, not just to poor Celia, but to other people as well, including Monica Beckwith, who's an actress. She was an actress in a school play, and Wendy was not happy that she didn't get the lead role in this play, and Monica Beckwith did. So she did pull a lot of pranks on Monica. A door on the set had crashed to the floor when she touched its knob. That could have killed her, to be quite honest. The tea she was supposed to drink on stage had been salted. Worst of all, I mean, I think having a door almost crash on you is the worst one for me, but worst of all, someone had cracked a raw egg into the pocket of a coat Monica was supposed to wear on stage. Monica hadn't noticed until she'd reached into the coat pocket. When she'd felt the egg, she'd screamed, burst into tears, and rushed off stage. Her understudy had to finish the play. You know, I'm just gonna say, this might be brutal, but I don't think Monica is a very professional actress if that's gonna prevent her from, continuing on. The show must go on. Like, I don't think she's suited for showbiz, for Hollywood. But we learn that Monica actually has had some success, and she's been in soap operas, which, like I say, honestly shocking. She doesn't sound like a consummate professional to me. There's always those stories about, actors who, break their arm in 2 places and keep going till the end of the take. Monica doesn't have that in her. She's not made of the stuff that Viggo Mortensen is made out of. If she kicked a helmet and her toe was broken, that would be it. Lord of the Rings would never be made if she'd been cast as Aragorn. Anyway, Nancy goes to visit Monica. The door is ajar, which is a bit weird, especially if you learn what happens in a moment. But Nancy just walks in. She hears, "Now I've got you where I want you," screamed Monica, laughing insanely. Bang! Went a gun inside the house. So, Monica is an actress. So my mind was like, oh, she's rehearsing for a scene or something. But Nancy is like, oh, I gotta go in slowly. I don't want to startle whoever's in there with the gun. But yeah, it's Monica just watching a screen test of herself. But, it also begs the question, why was the door ajar? But it's never explained. So Nancy and Monica are chatting, and Monica's like, let's go upstairs where we'll be more comfortable. So they go upstairs to Monica's room. And wait till you hear what she meant by more comfortable. The walls were entirely covered with pictures of Monica. Not an inch of wallpaper showed anywhere, and pictures were stuck in the windows and mirror as well. This room sounds like a nightmare. Let's go somewhere a bit more comfortable. It's just like this insane room, just with picture after picture on her face, covering the window, like she can't even look outside, covering the mirror, covering every surface of the wall. Like, this is terrifying. That sounds like a type of room designed to make you as uncomfortable as possible. I mean, especially for me if it was all pictures of my own face. Again, that sounds like hell. Then Nancy gets a call from Wendy, who has been robbed again, and I was like, Wendy's the culprit, isn't she? Like, she's, just trying to get more attention on herself, because it felt like every time she'd be robbed would be, like, when she was at home, but then they go over to Wendy's, both, like, Nancy and Monica, and then when they get back to Monica's place, she's been robbed as well. So there goes my theory, because Wendy was with them the whole time. But Monica also gets a message with cut-out newspaper letters. Don't waste your time. You couldn't act your way into a used car commercial. Another stellar insult from our cheeky little culprit. And if you thought Ned was bad, wait till you hear more about Dawn's behavior. Nancy's just taking a lovely walk in the park, and again, Dawn pops up out of nowhere and is like, hey Nancy, Nancy, seeing you at the party yesterday really got me thinking. I thought you were out of my system. Like she's some virus or something. Or when you have food poisoning. It's out of your system after you vomited it up enough. Anyway, he's thought the virus that is Nancy had got it out of his system, but, well, do you think we could try again? The audacity of this man to be like, oh, Nancy, I think we should get back together. I know you're dating Ned, but we should get back together. What is the matter with him? Nancy thought despairingly. Anyone else would have gotten the message yesterday. She cleared her throat and tried again. Yes, we did have some good times. But, Dawn, that was a long time ago. Yeah, Dawn. That was a whole 6 months ago. Get over it. I think you're a great guy, but I'm in love with Ned. I just can't see you and me getting back together. Now Dawn looked as though she'd slapped him, but now that I've been away, I'm more convinced than ever that you are really special, he pleaded. There's really no one like you at college. I love that he's like, oh, now I realize you're really special, so you have to date me. Dawn should have appreciated it while you had her. Then Nancy and Bess go visit Celia, and Bess has a sneezing fit, which feels like karma for the way she treated Lamont in Legend of the Crystal Skull. Apparently she's allergic to the type of paint Celia is using to paint her place. She keeps going, kerchoo, kerchoo. That's the sound Bess makes when she sneezes. So Bess leaves because she's allergic, and Celia decides to just casually paint her room while she's being interrogated for potentially being a culprit and committing a crime, and that she may have to go to jail. She gets on the ladder, but then she falls off and breaks her arm. Turns out the ladder was sabotaged and the top step was cut. There's another note for Celia, and this one is actually really genuinely horrible and is probably quite triggering for Celia. And the note says, you see, you're the same fat loser you always were. What the f? That's so horrible. Literally that could send Celia into a downward spiral. Celia says, it can only be from Judd Reese. He always used to call me capital F fat, capital L loser back in school. Great, sounds like a really nice guy. Reminder, this is Judd Reese, biggest greaser, gentleman biker. So then Nancy goes to talk to Judd, who works at a garage, and she's like, oh, Judd seems too likable to be guilty. Nancy, he used to call someone fat loser in high school. Oh, but he's so nice. He couldn't possibly be guilty. It's like, come on, Nancy. Use your critical thinking skills, babe, please. Then Nancy says to him, so, Celia told me you used to call her fat loser in high school. Is that true? Sorry, that line is just so funny to me. And he admits it is, but he's like, oh, but I wasn't the only one who was mean to Celia, so that makes it okay. We all do stupid things in high school, I'm sure Celia did stupid things too. It's like, please. He says he's sorry about it now, but it's like, but have you apologized to Celia about it. Not that we've seen anywhere in the text, but because he says he feels bad about it. It's actually okay. Yeah, it's totally fine to bully people in high school, as long as, like, you know, after you get out of high school, you say that you're really sorry about it to one random person that you talk to. Judd gets upset at Nancy accusing him. He's like, oh, you're just typecasting me because I'm the biggest greaser. Well, I've changed now, I tell you. Now I'm not the biggest greaser. Now I'm a gentleman biker. He storms out. He's like, Nancy, you better get out of here before I come back. And Nancy is like, oh, what would a good detective do right now? Not a great sign. But she's like, oh, I know what a good detective would do. Look through the trash. Go dumpster diving. And she does. She looks in Jude's trash. And you know what she finds in there? Newspapers with the letters cut out. Pretty incriminating. And that's about where I've got to. My main takeaway is Wendy is 101% that girl who, like, peaked in high school and will never get over it. She'll be bringing up her, like, high school achievements until she's, like, 78 years old and gets dementia and forgets about them. At least Judd is sorry, apparently, about bullying Celia in high school. Wendy just doubles down. She's like, you know what? She deserved it because of her appearance. Okay, Wendy, I really don't think that's true. In fact, I know it's not true. Hello, friends. It's a new day, and I was right to take advantage of the nice weather the other day, because today it is supposed to be cloudy and rainy. So instead of going to read outside, I am going to go to a coffee shop and read more of Most Likely to Die. That's right, I'm being so brave and reading Nancy Drew in public again. I have finished Most Likely to Die. And let me tell you, this book turns into a horror movie at the end. I'm not even joking, but we'll get to that. Anyway, I think the point I last got to when I was talking was Nancy goes to see Judd, the greaser, and she finds, like, cut up newspapers in his garbage can, like, that have been used to make the threatening notes, which, not gonna lie to you, are totally forgotten about in the last half of the book. Not a single person gets another creepy note, so I guess they used up all their newspapers. Nancy goes to meet Patrick. I believe Patrick is Wendy, the cheerleader's ex-boyfriend. Nancy goes to meet him for onion rings, and Judd's like, oh, I think that Don might be the guy you're looking for. Reminder, Don is Nancy's ex-boyfriend who won't leave her alone. And Nancy is so shocked that she almost chokes on an onion ring, and I was like, dang, that would be a way to die. You gotta die doing what you loved, eating onion rings. Come on, how could it be Don? He's so just completely innocuous, except for the way he's been, like, creepily stalking Nancy and trying to pressure her to get back together with him. He's just like a harmless little guy, you know? He's never felt at all threatening. And of course, Don is standing right behind her when this conversation is going on. Or to be more accurate, he's standing outside the onion ring coffee shop, breaking into Nancy's car. And Nancy's like, oh, I don't want to confront him. That would be so embarrassing. Treating him like a suspect? So awkward. Oh my god, I can't. Nancy girl, come on. He might be, like, burning people's faces off with a barbecue. You gotta, like, get over being like, oh, it's so embarrassing. Nancy goes up to Don, breaking into her car, and he's like, oh, hey, Nancy. What's up? I was just about to leave a note in your car. And Nancy's like, oh, a note? And Don's like, well, I'll just say it out loud now. So we never know what he actually has written on his note. It could be anything. It could be like, Nancy, I want to peel off your skin and wear it like a sleeping bag. But we don't know, because he never reveals the note. He stuffs it into his pocket. But he does ask Aunt Nancy out on a date again. If you can believe it, this man just does not understand the word no. But Nancy's like, you know, going on a date with Don would be a really good excuse to, like, investigate him and figure out if he actually is the culprit. I'd be happy to spend some time with you, she said. But not for the reason you think, she added to herself. This section is great because Nancy loves to just sinisterly make a few asides talking to Dawn. She's gonna, meet him at her house. I'll be ready at 7:30, said Nancy. Ready to see exactly what you're up to, she added to herself. The best part of this section is that Ned just randomly comes over at the very moment that Dawn arrives, and Nancy hasn't had the chance yet to tell Ned. So talk about awkward moments. The doorbell rang. Nancy ran down to answer it. Dawn, you're 10 minutes early, she started to say as she opened the door. But it wasn't Dawn. New paragraph. It was Ned. I guess you weren't expecting me, he said dryly. Ned! Oh no! Nancy blurted out before she could stop herself. Yeah, that's my reaction to Ned too whenever he shows up. No, I wasn't expecting you, she said more calmly. Something's come up, something connected with the case I've got to go out with. The doorbell rang again. Nancy? Dawn called. Ned was staring at Nancy. You're going out with Dawn? He asked. Yes, but... Well, that's just great. Ned was pale with anger. Nancy longed to tell him this was nothing more than a chance to investigate a potential suspect, but it was too late. No matter how upset Ned was, he'd have to wait for the explanation. Nancy, are you there? Dawn called. Ned yanked the front door open. Yes, she's here, he said grimly. Have fun, you two. He strode back to his car with a screech of tires. He backed out of the driveway and roared up the street. Okay, little baby, throw your little baby tantrum. So Nancy and Dawn go to an amusement park for their date, and they end up going on the Tunnel of Love. Nancy decides this is the perfect time to confront Dawn, right when, he's got thoughts of tunnels and thoughts of love on his mind. I think I've narrowed down my list of suspects to just a couple of people, and I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions. What? All in italics. The boat lurched as Dawn violently jerked around to face her. What's going on here? He hissed. Is this all a setup? Is that the kind of person you think I am? Well, let me tell you something. In the dim light, his face looked ghastly, white, and almost wraith-like. Ooh, 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 the ghostwriter has found their thesaurus. They're getting fancy over here. He's wraith-like. Okay, J.R.R. Tolkien. Alarmed, Nancy just stared back at him. He can't do anything, she thought. There are people all around us. Then Dawn abruptly moved toward her. Suddenly Nancy was sure he was going to attack. I'll show you what kind of person I am, Dawn growled. Nancy jumped to her feet. Get away from me, she cried. No, wait, Nancy, I didn't mean... Dawn jumped up too. The boat lurched again, and Nancy pitched over the side into the cold, dirty water. They really emphasize how dirty and gross this water is. By the way, they mention it's green and slimy with cigarette butts floating in it. Sounds lovely. Dawn jumps in too, and they both swim to land. And Dawn's like, I didn't mean to scare you. I was just so mad when I realized what you were thinking. But really, you've gotta believe me. I'm not the guy you're looking for. He sighed. In more ways than one, I guess. Which feels like a Manipulator 101. I didn't mean to scare you. What are you talking about? You're like, let me show you what kind of person I am. And lurch towards her. And Nancy is like, yeah, oh, it's totally okay, Dawn. I knew in my heart of hearts that you weren't the type of guy to do something like this. It's totally fine. I'm like, no. It is not fine. It is not fine. You were so scared you jumped out of the boat on the Tunnel of Love into the dirty, green, slimy cigarette butt water, and everything is fine, and you're like, oh, Dawn, wasn't this fun? We love to have a laugh here, don't we? I know you could never commit a crime. All is forgotten, including you stalking me this whole book and basically throwing yourself upon me and treating me in a very creepy, incel type of way. Oh, Nancy, you're the only girl in the world for me. All these girls at college suck. You're the only one. You're the only one. And she's like, oh, oh, Dawn. You're so silly. You're such a silly guy. Anyway, they head back to Nancy's house, and Ned's waiting there. Ned's car is parked in the driveway as her headlights lit up the front of the house. Nancy saw Ned sitting on the front porch, and he didn't look happy. He jumped to his feet and stalked toward them. Uh-oh, you'd better wait in the car, Nancy told Dawn nervously as she turned off the ignition. No way, he protested. I'm gonna tell him you didn't do anything wrong. Hey, Ned, he called as he got out of the car. This wasn't a date, you know. Nancy was just... I'm not interested in what you have to say, Cameron. Nancy had never seen Ned so angry. I want to talk to Nancy. Now. Nancy took a deep breath to make sure her voice wouldn't shake. Well, you'll have to wait for a little while, Ned. Let me take Dawn home first, okay? Fine. Ned bit out the word, but I'm coming with you. Dawn and Nancy explain everything to Ned, and he's like, oh, okay. Sorry if I went a bit overboard. Wait, what's so funny? You're not the one who went overboard, Nancy told him. What are you talking about? Ned asked. Come to think of it, you guys do look sort of wet. What happened? Ned is just so brutally unobservant. Your girlfriend comes home soaking wet, probably looking like a little sewer rat, and you don't even notice till they point it out to him. Anyway, they'll go back to Don's place. He has been burgled. His room has been trashed. Nancy and Ned go back to her place, and Nancy is like, you better not kiss me goodnight, Nancy told Ned. Whatever was in that water might be catching. I'd love to ask you in, she went on, but I've got to be honest, all I can think about is taking a shower. Any excuse to get rid of Ned. Nancy has just gone to bed after her whole horrifying ordeal. She's had her lovely shower. She's ready to relax and take a much-earned cat nap when she gets a phone call from Wendy to tell Nancy that she's been getting phone calls that are kind of like the phone call at the start of Scream. The guy's like describing everything that she's doing. They're using like a voice modulator. She even compares it to something out of a horror movie. And Nancy's like, okay, Wendy, call the police. And Wendy's like, I can't call the police. Why can't you call the police, Wendy? Are they too busy juggling pies or something? Like, that's never explained why she can't call the police. Anyway, it's just an excuse for Nancy to go over to Wendy's, where Nancy then gets a threatening phone call. And she realizes the phone call is being placed from the garage that Judd works at, because she can hear like a specific sound in the background that she heard there. And they're like, oh, I can see that you're there now, Nancy. And I was like, oh, they must have like some hidden camera set up, because like they're across town at this garage. Wendy is in her fancy like mansion, but it's like never explained how he knew exactly what Wendy was doing the whole time. Nancy calls up her gang. We've got Ned, we've got Bess, we've got George, we've got Wendy. They go to the garage to confront the culprit, and Nancy's like, all right, team, I've gathered all of you here, but you know what? I think it's best if I go in alone. Are you serious? Like, at this point, it literally is 2 a.m. She's woken them all up, got them out of their beds, been like, yeah, we've got superior numbers here. We're ready to confront this culprit. Actually, I'm just gonna go in by myself. Are you kidding me? That's how you die. But anyway, Nancy goes in alone. She finds Judd on the floor, bleeding out from an injury to his head. He's lost a lot of blood. No one else is there. She calls the police. The police come, they examine Judd's body. They're like, oh yeah, he looks like he's been hit probably over an hour ago. And Nancy's like, wait, that means Judd couldn't have placed that call because he was already knocked out. And I was like, this is when you cross him off your suspect list, when you realize he couldn't have made that call, not when you saw that he'd been, like, knocked out and is bleeding out from a head wound. Like, really? He was still a suspect then? I think they describe him as having had his, like, head crushed under one of those, like, lifts in garages. I might have made that up. I think maybe he's just lying next to it, but it's implied. And Nancy's like, yeah, he'd do that to himself, just to throw off suspicion. Then Nancy goes home. She settles into bed. Wendy is staying over because she's scared to be alone. Nancy's like, finally, time for sleep. I'm snug as a bug in a rug. She gets another phone call, this time from Patrick. And Patrick's like, Nancy, come help me. I'm being attacked. Nancy's like, oh no, Patrick. So she goes over to Patrick's house. He's not there. His parents are like, what are you talking about? We didn't hear any struggle. Patrick's room has been trashed. Patrick, however, is not there. Interesting thing that Nancy notices is that Don's trophies that he had in his room were all trashed, but Patrick's trophies are all intact, still on the shelves. And then Patrick's mom is like, I guess he didn't tell you all. He was expelled from university, kicked off the football team. He wasn't keeping up with his grades. He flunked out. Guess he was too embarrassed to tell you. And Nancy's like, oh, I think I know what's going on here. I think Patrick is the culprit. Patrick was striking back at whoever had been more successful than he. Monica, with her budding acting career. Celia, who'd made herself beautiful. Okay, book, I guess you can't be beautiful if you're not, 100 pounds soaking wet. Okay. Judd, who was finally turning his life around by being a gentleman biker who works at a garage. Patrick was so jealous of his reputation as a gentleman biker. Dawn, who was working hard at college in a way Patrick obviously hadn't. Dawn is a loser, still pining after his high school ex-girlfriend. And Monica is just on small-time soap operas and is not a good actress. And Wendy, his old girlfriend, who'd found a new boyfriend and managed perfectly well without Patrick. Wendy also kinda sucks. She peaked in high school. It's obvious. It's already obvious. 4 months out of high school. Even if all those things were true, it's such a loose motive. Oh, how dare Celia lose weight. I think I'm gonna steal all her stuff. I'm gonna steal her TV and VHS and leave her a nasty note and try to kill her just because she lost weight. How dare she? Sure. I would have understand if he was just, getting back at Wendy because she's, his ex-girlfriend. But, the others, really? He doesn't even really know Celia. They all bullied her. And, Judd, they obviously didn't know him that well if he wasn't invited to the party at Wendy's place. It's he's picked, the 5 random people from his high school who appear to maybe slightly have their lives on track in one specific area. We don't know how the rest of their lives are. Celia might have made herself beautiful. She doesn't seem happy. She hasn't found love. She doesn't seem fulfilled in other parts of her life. She hasn't been described as having a successful, fulfilling career or anything. It's not a great motive. But where was Patrick now? Nancy's mind was racing. Each time Patrick had plundered a new place, he'd done something to lure Nancy away from the scene first. If he'd called her to his house and then disappeared, it must have been a ploy to get her away from the next place he planned to visit. What if the next place was her own house, with Wendy inside, all alone? If Patrick was the culprit, then he was the one who had been terrifying Wendy with those phone calls, and that meant he's going over there to kill her, Nancy gasped. She goes back to her house. She peeks in the front window. Wendy's just relaxing, lying on the sofa, watching TV. She's like, oh, I needn't have worried. She goes inside. Wendy is actually tied to the sofa. She's trussed up like a Christmas hog or something. I don't know if Christmas hogs are actually trussed up, but that was the comparison that came to my mind. But where is he now? Nancy asked. Waiting for you, Nancy. Why don't you just have a seat? Nancy whirled around. Patrick was standing in the doorway. There was a broad grin on his face, another roll of clothesline looped around his arm, and a pistol in his hand. He's got a gun. And he goes, let's reminisce about the old days. The old days, Patrick, of 3 months ago? Really? He says that he broke up with Wendy because she didn't pay him enough attention. She was always thinking about cheerleading. She had a one-track mind, only cared about cheerleading. Sound familiar? Sound like a certain person we know who only really cares and thinks about one thing, especially putting that one thing before her boyfriend. For example, if she prioritized that one other thing so much that it made her go on a date with another guy while still dating her boyfriend. sound kind of familiar? I guess we're just lucky that Ned hasn't realized yet that this could be a potential motive for murder. Anyway, Patrick starts talking about college and like why he dropped out of college and what happened there. It was really more my football coach's fault. He just wouldn't let me play enough. If he'd kept me on the team, I wouldn't have had so much time on my hands. You know what it's like when you get bored. He chuckled sheepishly. For a chilling second, he looked exactly like the sweet-faced... We do sweet-faced Patrick. The sweet-faced popular guy he'd been until just a couple of hours ago. Wait, just a couple of hours ago. I don't know about that. It sounds like he hasn't been the sweet-faced popular guy for a long time. Nancy's like, I don't understand what you mean. Did you get in some other kind of trouble, too? Patrick gave an elaborate sigh. Oh... No, I did not get in some other kind of trouble, he said, mimicking her. I was just borrowing that stuff they caught me with. But try to explain that to the dean of students. Nancy didn't dare press Patrick too hard. There's no need for him to be more specific anyway. It was obvious he'd screwed up in a major way at college. Drugs. Patrick was dealing drugs, or possessing drugs, I guess at the very least. Borrowing drugs. We don't need to get more specific, because then we'd have to market this book to a higher age range. Those who know. Imagine reading this as maybe a 7-year-old and being like, Mom, what does this mean? I was just borrowing that stuff they caught me with. What kind of stuff are they talking about, Mom? Drugs, honey. It's about time we talked about drugs. I wonder if he was the one who was dealing cocaine to Celia. That might be the most explicit reference to drugs, or at least hard drugs in a Nancy Drew book. There's steroids in Secrets Can Kill, but that's slightly different. I'm assuming they mean harder drugs, because if it was just steroids, he could have said steroids, because they have explicitly talked about steroids in other books in this series. So I'm gonna assume it's something more like heroin, or something. This little sweet-faced Patrick dealing heroin. Patrick ties up Nancy. She and Wendy are now both tied up. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go to the garage to look for some barbecue stuff, because his plan is to burn the house down with Wendy and Nancy inside. He's gonna burn them alive. You know, the scene with the barbecue burn where Patrick almost burnt his face off with the barbecue, all that was just foreshadowing to Wendy and Nancy getting barbecued like two little shrimps. But don't fret, young reader who has just learned what a drug is. It takes Nancy only half a page to get out of her bonds. But then Patrick comes back before she's finished untying Wendy. I couldn't find any gasoline, so I guess I'm just gonna have to shoot you both. But yeah, apparently not many barbecues are happening at the Drew house. Actually, I would beg to disagree with that, because I didn't suffer through the Drew's Onion special just for this book to tell me that the Drews don't really do barbecues. So his plan is to shoot them. Nancy and Wendy run. Where do they run? Well, this is the portion of the book that devolves into horror movie territory. So of course, instead of running out the front door or out the back door, they run up the stairs further into the house, because they're in a horror movie, and that's what you do, because you're idiots. So they're hiding in a spare bedroom, and there's this quite scary moment when Patrick is going around all the rooms upstairs trying to find them, and Nancy's like, oh, we might be okay if we just stay quiet. And of course then Wendy goes to the window and goes, help! At the top of her lungs out the window, and is just screaming out the window like an idiot, drawing Patrick right to them. Wendy, come on. Time and place, girl. There was no time to think. Nancy had to stop him now. She jumped to her feet and pressed herself into the wall by the doorway. Just you wait for what happens next, because it's so good. So she's jumped to her feet, she's pressed herself into the wall by the doorway. The instant Patrick loomed into view, she scissored her leg up and caught him on the chin, not the chin of his little sweet face. He doubled up and fell to the ground without so much as a sigh. Nancy has killed a man with a single kick. And right after that, the first pink light of dawn was creeping into the house when the police arrived and took Patrick away. What a dramatic time jump. And then, of course, the characters all get together to kind of, like, explain Patrick's motives, his actions. It turns out he planted the cut-up newspapers in Jude's garbage can, and it's like, why would he do that? Like, why did he think for sure that Nancy would go there and then think to look in the garbage? She didn't look into anyone else's garbage. It's very goofy. And also, yeah, the whole thing with how he saw exactly what Wendy and Nancy were doing when he was across town at the garage, also never explained. And so Nancy and Ned are spending their last day together before Ned goes back to Emerson College with Wendy. That's how they're spending their last night together. Just the two of them and Wendy. Wow, Wendy. I love hanging out with Wendy. That's supposed to be the happy ending. Oh, we get one more night together, so let's spend it with Wendy. Off Carolyn Keene. They try to make me feel like sympathy for Wendy. They're like, oh, she's so much nicer now. It's like, really? Is she? Have you really proven that to me at all on the page? Has she apologized to Celia on the page for being not only cruel to her in high school, but cruel to her in the contents of this very book, in the present moment? No, she hasn't done that, but they're like, oh, that Wendy, she sure had some character development. She sure is a lot nicer now. It's like, where? The only textual evidence I have of Wendy's behavior is her, like, talking about Celia deserving getting bullied because she's overweight. Wendy can get That's the end of Nancy Drew Case Files number 27, Most Likely to Die. Have you read Most Likely to Die? Let me know if you did and what you thought of it, if you enjoyed this recap and have any thoughts based on it.